Today we will be working with slope and intercepts. So a little bit of background. There are two ways to write a linear equation. One is in standard form, and the other is in slope-intercept form. So first, a little bit about standard form. It has the form ax plus by equals c. May not mean a whole lot to you right now, but from this form, we can graph an equation. So the easy part about this is we can find what is called the X-intercept and the Y-intercept. Now, what does that mean? So say we have a coordinate plane. Here are my axes. And I am going to draw just a random line. Boom. Okay? I just drew this line. Now, intercept, that means where it crosses. So the X-intercept is where our line crosses the x-axis, which is right here. Now, what do we know about this point? Well, it is somewhere on the x-axis. We don't know where. And our y value, it is 0. This means our y equals 0. So we have some sort of point x equals 0. Same thing is true for our y-intercept. Where does it cross the y? What do we know about it? Well, it crosses somewhere, but our x value is 0. Okay. So to find our x-intercept, what we do is we substitute in 0 for y. We want the place where y equals 0. To find our y-intercept, we are finding where x equals 0. So let's do one example of that. Say we have the equation 3x plus 4y equals 12. We want to graph this linear equation. So what we're going to do first is find our two intercepts. To find the x-intercept, we are going to put 0 in for y. So let's do that. Just going to rewrite the equation for now. Now I'm going to substitute 0 in for y. So 3x plus 4 times 0 equals 12. Well, we know anything times 0 drops off. That equals 0. So we are left with 3x equals 12. Now we can divide by our coefficient. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. X equals 4. So this means our x-intercept is at 4. Let's hold that thought. Let's find the y-intercept. So when we find the y-intercept, we substitute 0 in for x. So let's just rewrite the original equation. We are going to substitute in 0 for x. So let's just write that 3 times 0 plus 4y equals 12. Well, 3 times 0 is 0. So that part just drops off. So we have 4y equals 12. We can now divide by our coefficient. And then what we have is y equals 3. So our y-intercept is 3. We can use these two pieces of information to graph this equation. So I drew a coordinate plane with two axes here. So x-intercept, where does it cross the x-axis? That is at x equals 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Where does it cross the y-intercept? At y equals 3. 1, 2, 3. So here are 2 points. Whenever we have 2 points, we can graph or draw a line that contains both of them. So normally I would have a straight edge, but for now I'm not. So here is, that is a straight line, believe it or not. So it goes through the point 0, 3, because that is our y-intercept, and then 4, 0. That is our x-intercept. Now there's another form. Let's talk a little bit about slope-intercept form. In our last lesson, we learned about slope, and that is a ratio of the change in y over the change in x. So we are going to graph some equations or find our y-intercept and our slope to help us graph in the future. Okay, so let's look at this general form, y equals mx plus b. We learned in our last lesson that the letter m is our slope. The letter m is slope. The letter b is now our y-intercept. So if I have these two pieces of information, I will eventually be able to graph lines. So let's look at one example. Y equals x minus 6. What I want to find is both the slope and the y-intercept. So the first thing I have to do is make sure that it is actually in slope-intercept form. If it is, great. If it isn't, we have to get it there, and then we can find that information. Okay, so we have to always make sure that the y is by itself on the left. Then comes, after the equal sign, the x. There might be a coefficient here. And then we have a constant here. It could be either plus something or minus something. In this case, it looks like we have everything in the right order. So we have y equals x minus 6. Now the m is the coefficient of the x. Okay? There's nothing there though, is it? So when there's nothing there, we assume that our coefficient is 1. So our m is 1. Our b is whatever this whole thing is. If this is a minus, that becomes a negative 6. If it's a plus, then it's just this number. So in this equation, our y-intercept is negative 6, and our slope is 1. Let's do another one that may not be so easy. Let's do 8x equals 5y. Separate this. Okay. So we have, this is not in slope-intercept form. This doesn't look like this at all. So we have to get it so that the y's are on the left and the x's are on the right. So in this case, they're opposite. What we can do is just simply flip-flop them, okay? Because we know if one thing is equal to the other, it doesn't matter which side they're on, as long as we flip the whole thing. So we could write this as 5y equals 8x. So looks like we're kind of close. We got our y's over here. We have our x's over here. So now we have to get y by itself. So we have to divide by this coefficient of y. So in this case, it's 5. That will drop off. So we're left with y equals, now, how do we rewrite this? How do we make it look a little bit nicer? So 8x divided by 5, we can say that that is 8/5 x. So if we have a number in the numerator and in the denominator, we pull that out to make a fraction, and then we have x. So we have now y by itself, we have x with a coefficient, but there's no b, okay? So if there's nothing there, we say that's plus 0. So now our slope of this equation is the coefficient of x. That would be 8/5. The y-intercept of this equation is 0. In other words, the place where it crosses the y-axis is at x equals 0. So that's at our origin. Okay. When we start to learn how to actually graph these, this will make more sense. And then finally, let's do something that's probably more complicated than both of these. 3x plus 7y equals 9. Okay? 3x plus 7y equals 9.
So first thing we need to do, we make sure our y's are over on the left, the x's are over on the right, plus anything else, okay? So
We need to move this 3x over to this side. So we're going to subtract 3x. This disappears, so we're left with 7y. Now we always need to have this x thing right after the equal sign. So we have negative 3x, and then we have a 9. So we have to determine, well, is that plus 9, is that minus 9? Well, there's no negative sign right in front of there, so it is a plus 9. Okay, we're getting closer. Now we have to get y by itself. So here we have to divide by 7. If we divide this side by 7, we have to divide the right side by 7. That means we have to do each term divided by 7. So now here is where we end up. 7 divided by 7, that drops off. We're left with y. Negative 3x divided by 7. Remember what we did over here. We changed this. We pulled that fraction out to be a coefficient. Negative 3/7. Don't forget that negative sign. And then we have plus 9/7. That's a constant. That is our b. So our slope is negative 3/7. Our y-intercept is 9/7. That is our introduction to slope and our x and y intercepts.